Hello, and welcome to episode 82 of the Dash podcast. I'm Mark Mason, and I'm joined by my two fellow amigos, Joel Valenzuela. How are you?
Hey, it's great. We're approaching my grandfather's age in numbers of podcasts so far.
Yeah, we're getting up there now. And
Catching up with them.
And Brian Freeman, how are you?
Good.
Excellent. Well, let's not waste any time longer. We've got Ryan Taylor, Dash Core CEO, back on the podcast. How's it going, Ryan? Welcome back.
Thank you. Going well. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent.
He seems to have hard forked my shirt and had his own spin. So we did not mean we did not mean today to be a twinning day, but something's just happened, spontaneous order and all.
Well, this is a big occasion because this may potentially be the last time that the community gets to directly communicate with Ryan for 2018. So I know the community's really excited about this. It's buzzing in the live chat already. So we've only got a certain amount of time with Ryan. So let's just make the most of it. Now, the last podcast we did with Ryan had thousands of views. So we need to keep in mind that some people watching this may not be diehard Dash fans. So recently, Ryan did a blog post called Dash Core Group is Sustainable. So Ryan, if you would be so kind, could you just give a brief summary? Because I think that'd be a good point to start the podcast on.
Yeah. So the summary is, first of all, I think there's a bit of buzz around the price and whether or not that can allow us to continue to deliver and that type of thing. And I think the impetus for that is we came out with statements saying, hey, we have plans that take us down to $120 and things like that. And below that, we would need to revisit the set of plans that we had in place. Well, of course, the markets and Dash in particular have moved down in price significantly over the last month and a half. And, I think that raised a lot of questions in the community around, well, does this mean that Dash Core Group is laying off or disbanding or doing these types of things? And we've seen other projects in the space wrap up. Ethereum Classic Dev, we had Steemit lay off 70% and then 80% of their staff. And so I think there was a little bit of fear that the same thing would happen with us. And so I felt the need to address it in the community and I think align kind of the reality of the situation with the level of fear that I was seeing with some people. And I think the long and short of the blog post is, look, there will be a bottom. We don't know when that bottom is. We've kind of been hitting along the high 50s, low 60s for a while now. And at those levels, if it were to sustain for a long period of time, yes, we would be looking at reducing the size of the team a bit, but it's not nearly as bad as I think people are making it out to be in a couple different ways. One is we have a lot of team members who had already stepped forward to say, hey, if it came to it, just cut my salary or eliminate my salary completely. I'm not here for the salary. I'm here for the right reasons. And of course, not everybody is in a position to do that. But what has happened as the prices come down is we've had more and more team members step forward voluntarily, not even asking. Like I'm not even asking for this. And they really care about the project and they really care about each other. And if they don't truly need it, a lot of people have stepped forward to say, hey, just take me off the payroll roster. I will continue to do my job. And it almost makes me emotional that people care that much about Dash. And so far, we haven't had to cut back in any significant way. Now, we have eliminated stipends for ad hoc contributors, people who kind of maintain some servers that provide information to the community or, do translations and things like that. And pretty much everybody has said, I understand, I'm not dependent on that for my income and I'll keep trucking. with you guys and providing services while this is going on. And so we've just had kind of this groundswell of support from people who really care, and it's making all the difference for us. I think that the other thing to note is, before we would cut, first of all, not everybody is in that position, right? Not everybody is able to do that. And so, if the price were to stay extremely low for a long period of time, we would start eating into our buffer that we have set aside precisely for this type of situation. And so we need to balance those two. We don't want to overreact to the market bottom and cut our run rate all the way down to the market bottom. We also want to be mindful that over time, our buffer would reduce if we continued at the same run rate. And so what we're doing is we're kind of managing our costs down in a more gradual way, and we're taking people up on their offers to forego salary as we do so. And so if this is the market bottom, if $40 is the market bottom before things start to recover, we won't have overreacted to it. The other thing to note is, we would probably cut from the business side before we would cut from the development side. The top priority is evolution. We do have a buffer in place that will allow us, depending on the duration and severity of this bear market, the ability to last months leveraging that. And so we have a runway to evolution. Even if the price went to zero, some people might need to leave the project, but we would get it done. And so I think that obviously the price can't go to zero. I'm disclosing that I am buying right now at these levels. I'm actively buying on a regular basis. So I think there's a lot of people like me that have a lot of faith in the project. And as long as there are people with faith in the project, people that are willing to contribute their time, invest, obviously it's not going to go away. So
this could be a silver lining, though, right? Because
what's that?
This could be a silver lining, like a golden opportunity, because there's a lot of people in the community echoing what you're saying. We all know Bitcoin had first mover advantage, but Dash had first mover advantage of being the first self-funding, self-governing DAO. And we haven't always had the recognition. And even people that have been in the industry for a long time have overlooked that. So right now, we actually have a lot of potential to build upon that. What are your thoughts on that? Because we don't get the recognition we deserve a lot of the time. And now people may be forced to see that we are building and we are pushing things forward. And this is our secret sauce.
Yeah, I think that, things are continuing to happen. We're seeing projects continue to move forward. Granted, the funding isn't what it once was, but there's a lot of projects that are continuing to move forward in Venezuela. In the Alt-36 stuff continues to move forward. We've made some good moves on the remittance side that hopefully will yield some fruit soon. And so we continue to build capabilities for our network that are extremely valuable. And like I said, we're not going away anytime soon. The great news about our first chain came out this week with Church's Chicken. They've already rolled out to 10 locations. They've got 3 more that are on a different point of sale system and will take a little bit longer. But I think we're continuing to see kind of the metrics that matter in the long term continuing to build, the product continuing to build. We're on, I think, release candidate 8 on testnet with version 13, and we're hoping that's the final. The only thing we're doing with this version is testing the end-to-end migration from a version 12 to a version 13. And so, we've continued to make steady progress on the development front. This project isn't going away. I know that there's a lot of fear out there right now that we've heard about death spirals in Bitcoin. Those are unrealistic, right? The difficulty adjusts. There's going to be no death spiral in Dash from a budget constraint perspective, because you do have so many people that are willing to just devote their time to it. And so, yeah, I think that, and by the way, the budget is not zero. It's still a significant sum of money. And when you see other projects that had ICO money that's now gone, literally, they blew through $40-50 million, and it's gone. It's not coming back. Those are the projects that I think will die a slow death. And we're just not in the same situation.
Yeah, I've noticed during this time, obviously looking around, I'm always like, oh, prices are going low. A lot of people tightening their belts. Oh, this proposal is not in this month. Or, oh, like you start to look around a little bit. And then as soon as you look outside of the Dash bubble, it's just like, it's like the apocalypse. And it's crazy to see how like Dash has done really well in weathering the storm, but not just from like the money perspective. I keep on getting approached by so many people being like, hey, I want to start pitching Dash to merchants. How can I do that now? And what can I do right now? And a lot of people are still having that fire. Like the fire has actually gone up for adoption since a year ago at the peak.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a year ago,
I do not see that in other projects for the most part.
Look at our merchant count a year ago versus today. It's crazy what's happening. And it's all positive outside of the price. And so, this market will hit a bottom, the cryptocurrency market as a whole, Dash, and we'll start moving in the other direction at some point. And when that happens, I think there's a lot of great projects and talent on the pipeline, things that people are working on right now that will have funding available for and so on. I think there's just a little bit of an overreaction in the markets right now. I talk to people a lot, obviously, and projects are folding up. And the ones that are most transparent about it, like Steam It and ETC, and these guys are guys with integrity, right? They're coming out and they're saying, here's the situation, here's what we've run into, here's what we did wrong, here's what we're doing to try and fix it. For each one of those, there's 10 of them that aren't communicating anything, are privately, having teams disintegrate. I think it's uglier than people realize because they don't publicize that, right? They don't go out and say our project is imploding. And so I think it is a real mess out there, but it's probably a mess that need to happen because there are so many sustainable models out there that just need to be cleansed.
Yeah, I think it's part of the ICO stuff is what's dragging the price down because we have to get past that phase. It's kind of like the Mt. Gox phase. There's a lot of just bad investment in those ICOs, and they're just kind of cashing out, and a lot of them, just seem to be disappearing, and hadn't heard from them.
Well, a lot of them are going to have to give their money back. We've seen this with the SEC already, enforcement action against a couple of them. I've seen tweets from like Barry Silbert saying, hey, all is not well in VC land. We're having trouble raising money. Well, that's because they're coming to realize that this is not a free lunch, and you don't get to just have something pre-product and fund it and walk away with investor money. They're having to actually go back and refund everything. And I think they're dealing with the fact that they thought that they were exempt from a lot of this stuff, and the bottom line is they're not.
While we're talking about the SEC, let's move on to some of the questions from the community. This one's from community member Macrochip, very well known.
Who's that guy?
What is the current status of the SEC no action letter?
Yes, so talking with our own lawyers, they encouraged me to say nothing. Their official line is you should tell everyone no comment at all. And I've pushed back on that to say, no, we need to be able to make some kind of statement. Of course, they're obviously looking at it purely through the lens of risk management or that type of thing. And what I think we settled on is I'm allowed to say that we are proceeding with the process. These are not fast processes. When I kicked this project off and put the proposal up to the network, I think it said a minimum of 6 months, and that was over the summer. Now we did, or late spring perhaps. We of course have confirmed that we've submitted the letter. We received some questions back. We submitted responses to those, and that's basically where we are with the process. Coming into the holidays, I would not expect much activity. So I think this is, perhaps something that we will receive news on that we are able to share with anyone sometime early next year would be my hope. I think that the SEC is this is my perception speaking. This is not anything that the SEC has told me, but just seeing the news out there, I think the SEC is very motivated to get information out there about models that they think are securities or not. I think that they are motivated to provide clarity to the marketplace. I think they're motivated to deal with some of the most egregious activities that have taken place so far, taking investor money and putting it into a pooled company, and especially those that aren't delivering. So, I think they have their hands full, but they have the right motivation to try to get resolution on submissions like ours.
One of the other big questions was about the updated roadmap. Any progress in that department?
Well, on the last quarterly call, we shared an updated roadmap that introduced the concept of version 14. The reason for that is we felt like 13 as scoped was too large to hit the network with all at once. 13 as it is probably the largest introduction of new code into the network since 2014. It introduces a lot of new functionalities. It introduces some things that will have consumer benefit in the form of most transactions being instant send automatically. So we think there's a lot in there. And it reduces the overall risk if we separate out the long-living masternode quorum portion of it. I think that 14 will follow very quickly on testnet behind 13. And all that one will introduce, like the primary functionality that will introduce, is the long-living masternode quorums themselves. And so we've made steady progress against it. I think the introduction of 14 slows things down a little bit, but it definitely reduces the risk. And I think that we need to be mindful of that too. So I think that's where that decision came from. And we hope to have more news on the next quarterly call, which will probably be around the final week of January. And we'll continue to share where we are in that roadmap, the progress that we've made. And of course, we're very transparent about the stuff that's happening on testnet.
Do we have any kind of estimate on Evo, the quarter Q1 or 2? Or?
Because we've put out dates in the past and they're very hard to predict, outside of getting to testnet, they're very hard to predict. We really feel like it's better to put the roadmap out and you guys can see the items getting ticked off as we go. 13 kicked off in October. or early November, I think it was. And it's taken about 5-6 weeks to get to a stable version. We're going to do a final test here of the migration from 12 to 13 with a clean build on 12, straight through to 13. If that goes well, we'll be ready to roll that one out. That's the clarity that we can provide right now. 14 will follow immediately after.
And honestly, just seeing what all is in 13 and 14, it's a little bit to be expected that testing would take a lot quicker. Like if it was just all right, like a few days in testnet, we're done, we just push it to mainnet, I'd be a little bit nervous because just how much stuff had happened. Just I keep on. I do watch the milestone on GitHub every single day, and I see stuff pop up and go away and pop up and go away, and it just a new release candidate. I'm like, well, they're making sure this thing works.
Yeah, each of the release candidates, there were some that were to test bug fixes, but many of the release candidates were actually associated with, okay, we're only going to test this one thing as part of this release candidate. Then the next release candidate, we're going to, test this next thing and fix all the bugs with that. And then the next thing and fix all the bugs with that. And so, this was definitely not a simple testing procedure. I don't know the number of lines of code that are going into this one, but it's massive. It's absolutely massive.
Right. The next question we got from the community that had the highest amount of emojis, proof by emoji, was from Julio Dash. Says, firstly, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Taylor, very professional here. In your opinion, what were the top 3 errors made in 2018 by yourself or Dash Core Group? What were the lessons learned, and how are we not repeating them going forward?
Great question. I love that question. I think that, first of all, my dad isn't here, so I don't know who he's talking to with Mr. Taylor, but probably the biggest mistake that we made was adhering to the principle that we should only draw funds from the network as required to operate. Mm-hmm. And you think about the missed opportunity here to build up a war chest. I think that there were a lot of people in the community that had the viewpoint that Dash Core Group should not build a war chest. And the reason for that is that how can we fire Dash Core Group if Dash Core Group has a war chest built up? And I respect that viewpoint. And I think we were overly cautious in making sure that we could make everybody happy by continuing to adhere to that principle ourselves. And so only when a budget became low did we attempt to replenish it. In an up market, that's fine. In a down market, that was difficult to deal with. Luckily, we hedged ourselves out, eventually. But at this point, the amount that we can draw from the network is quite low. Well, Dash Core Group really is set up so that the network can trust us with funds for several reasons. One, although we are a company, we issued all of our shares to Dash to the Dash DAO. Technically, the term is the Dash DAO Irrevocable Trust. They own 100% of us, and that trust is administered by the network. Now, there's 2 issues. One, that really didn't get fully set up until January, and so prior to that, the network would be taking significant risk if it allowed us to build up a war chest. And so I think it would be irresponsible of us prior to January to even suggest it to the network, because the shares hadn't been issued yet. I could have issued all the shares to myself and walked away with $10 million or something. And so that would not be ideal. So until that legal structure was in place, it didn't, Dash Core Group was not necessarily a safe place to keep that kind of money. The second issue is that the first election hasn't taken place. Now that by the laws of the trust, has to take place by March 31st of 2019. And we'll be publishing the rules for that election shortly. We have to publish those rules 90 days in advance. That means December 31st. So under the, charter of the trust, I have to publish that stuff shortly. What the rules will be, we've been working through those internally, what our proposed path forward is there for that. And so once that election process takes place, now we've truly handed over the reins to the network of Dash Core Group. We have a fiduciary duty back to the network not to waste those funds and to use them in a financially prudent way. We have no profit incentive whatsoever. And the network can replace our board. Under those circumstances, I think it is now very safe for the network to allow Dash Core Group to build up a war chest. And I think it's good for the network to allow that to take place the next time the price has a nice run up. I think it's healthier for the network. We're still able to be replaced. And it's probably the safest structure in which to house a significant amount that the network has.
So what you're saying is you prioritize decentralization above your own long-term job prospects.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
that's good to hear. That's a little bit of a rarity in the space.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame, but I'm not patting myself on the back for that. That's the culture of Dash, and it's the culture of the entire core team, most of whom was in place before I got here. And so I think that there's, in any case, we wanted to adhere to that. We wanted to formalize it. We wanted to make it impossible for this team to get hijacked, by people that don't have the best interests of the network in mind. So that whole process took a lot longer than I would like. It was the first time these lawyers had ever set anything up like it. I think it's the first time anything like it exists in the world. And so it took a long time. If it would have happened sooner, maybe we could have done it. But, I think that next time that happens, I think we should take advantage of it, whether I'm here or not. I think that there should be the ability to build that up, and that'll make us more resilient in a downturn. It'll allow us to lock away funds for a rainy day and still provide that governance mechanism to the network itself to basically fire us if we're doing a bad job. And that's what needs to be in place.
So in terms of accountability then, and holding core accountable, you're saying there's going to be, in this irrevocable trust, you mentioned a board, and previously before people have asked about, the keys to the sporks and that sort of stuff. So is there going to be some kind of election involved in process in the future, or how? Because this is kind of new territory here, and we're kind of going into the unknown.
Yeah, we are. I don't know how it'll all work out. I have certainly some hypotheses, but the trust has a role called the trust protectors. There's 6 of them. It could be altered in the future, but there are currently 6 slots. Those 6 slots are occupied by members of Dash Core Group because we needed to assign someone to it to spin the entity up. That set up the trust, and these are public. We've posted them on the forum. Anyone can read it. There has to be an annual election. That first election will take place this March. And so we'll post the rules for that. And basically masternodes will get to elect these 6 representatives. Now, those 6 representatives are there to represent the interests of the network. And they have the ability to tell the trustee, which is a legal role. The current trustee resides in Switzerland, and they can direct the trustee to fire our board, the board of Dash Core Group Inc., and they can reassign the board. And they can also eliminate a particular member of the Dash core group board. So if Dash core group at any point is dysfunctional, they can assign a new board to one that will fire me. You know, they can put a board in there that is friendly to their interests, and so and again, if they do a bad job, the network itself can not re-elect them.
Okay, I've got a big question for you. So the last one, talking about errors, this one's a bit more positive. Once again from Julia Dash. Mr. Taylor, once again, what words of encouragement would you say for the Dash investors that, in spite of this brutal bear market, still believe in the project?
I think I said some of it in the blog post that I put up last week, and that is, I know that 90% of this market is speculative still. 10% of it is projects that are actually building things.
I'm surprised it's that high a number.
90% or 10?
No, 10. I'm surprised that 10 is that high.
I mean, it depends on the project, right? But I think that obviously that ratio has come way down in recent months, and I think that we can focus on the 10% that we can control, which is delivery and focusing on adoption and focusing on business development. And 10% may seem disheartening, but it's that 10% that can make a big difference in terms of what ends up happening in the short term. And I think that we're really hitting on all cylinders when it comes to that right now. You look at metrics like transaction counts. You look at metrics like wallet downloads. We had the highest number of wallet downloads last month of any time in the second half of the year. Venezuela has overtaken all other countries in wallet downloads at this point by a wide margin. They're double the next largest country, which is the United States, on our wallet download.
How many wallets is it?
Well, it's hard to say for a couple reasons. One is the VPNs block our website people have to access us through VPNs, so it's unclear. We do get numbers from like the Google Play Store. So on Android, we can tell very easily what country they're located in based on what store they're logged into. But the IP addresses themselves don't always give it away. So they also have some sites inside of Venezuela. And so we have to aggregate together some metrics. What I can't, and the third thing that throws a monkey wrench in here is that a lot of wallets are coming preloaded on the crypto mobile phones to the tune of many thousands. And so it's difficult to say, but based on, if you extrapolate Android out to other device types, it's in the tens of thousands. Certainly more. I believe it's well over 10,000 a month. And these are new wallet downloads. They don't count, if you're refreshing with the latest version, and already have a wallet and it's just downloading an updated version. Those don't count. So it's unclear, but we know that it's by far our largest country at this point. And so, I think we're seeing real signs of adoption. It is very clearly happening there. We can talk a little bit about Alt36, but the B2B transactions are live at this point, and they have customers that are moving large sums of money using the Dash.
By large, do you have like a range you're comfortable talking about?
6 figures a week. So
something.
Yeah, I mean it's not small at this point. They're probably our largest payment processor at this point, even compared to AnyPay when you count volume. And so I think that hopefully there's some good news coming from there in terms of the continued growth that they're beginning to experience. And so you look across the landscape, it's like the stuff that matters to our long-term viability continues to do really, really well. And that's the stuff that we can focus on and that we have good news to share. I believe that eventually price and use need to converge. I think that is just a logical outcome. That if we continue to grow the number of users, grow the number of use cases, grow the number of merchants, and grow the number of transactions on the network, that's the stuff that's in our control, and we're doing really well at it. And so I know that this type of precipitous fall that has gone on for a long, long time takes its emotional toll. It has on me, right? I'm not going to pretend like I'm immune to the emotions of this type of market. It was a euphoric high, and it has been a terrible low, and it feels like something I care about very deeply is being battered around, and it makes me a little angry, a little upset. But I know that in the long term, we're doing the right things. We're making the right moves. We're the one who's actually leading to adoption in the places that need it most. I don't see any other project in cannabis that's serious. I don't see any other project in Venezuela that's serious. These are the use cases that cryptocurrency's built for. And we're the ones leading the way. And for the most part, nobody's paying attention. You look at
I think you was the first person really to mention the benefits of instant send in terms of exchanges and trading, in terms of arbitrage, right?
Yes.
Well,
Also,
yeah. And imagine when that's turned on by default on every exchange. And by the way, now we've got instant send on DigiFinex and IDAX, both top 10 in terms of volume. And that's on the inbound transactions too. We've got it on Kraken. We've got it on Exmo. We've got it on a bunch of different exchanges at this point. There's some other smaller ones that we announced earlier in the year. Imagine that this starts to become a viable option to move money between exchanges that are very large. I think that's another use case that we're going to be able to exploit a portion of the market there. And so I think that we're making the right moves. I think that our technology continues to move in the right direction. I don't think people have really picked up on some of the implications of long-living masternode quorums yet. It'll be interesting to see when people start to figure it out.
Yeah, I think the first one of those that people are going to start waking up to is the whole chain locks thing, which might seem like it's a security increase, but in the context of today, being Craig Wright proof is pretty significant. Seeing all the chaos that's happening in the markets.
Well, also, if you've got a chain lock, why do you need to wait for 6 confirmations for anything?
Yeah. That was the really exciting thing for me, and that was the penny drop moment. We had Alex Werner, Dash Corp dev, for those that don't know, watching, and he was talking about the potential of the long-living masternode quorum, because he was saying, think about the use case of a mum having to send funds to their children to catch the bus, having to send that money instantly so they can pay for the bus, no time to wait, instantaneous. And these are these real life use cases. And when you look across the board now, especially in the current marketplace right now, not many people can live up to that standard. But anyway, I want to address the elephant in the room, because it's been brought up in the live chat and it was one of the most popular questions. And of course, it's about exchanges. So let's address the elephant in the room. It's the Coinbase question. Now, I just want to say first off the gate, lots of people are saying, has Dash Core Group reached out to Coinbase? Now, typically, when it comes to private business relationships, we have to be a bit careful how we tread, because Dash Core Group may be under NDA in certain situations. However, it's such a big question. Ryan, I hope you don't mind answering this. So can you speak about Coinbase? Have you engaged them?
Coinbase has, I think about 3 months ago, 2-3 months ago, published that they are allowing projects to submit an application. And it basically was an online form, very comprehensive, went through many, many pages of requirements for legal documents, demonstrating why you believe you're not a security, questions about ownership percentages, whether an ICO was held, all kinds of legal questions primarily. Of course, we had very professional materials to submit against each of those items because of the work that we prepared for the SEC, because of the work that we prepared for other exchanges that were asking for similar information. And so we were able to leverage a lot of that material and basically very professionally address each of the questions in their process. Now, Coinbase is not exactly very transparent, either publicly or with us. What I have seen from tweets, they have tweeted out, hey, we're investigating the following assets. And Dash has not been on that list of assets. I suspect that what they're doing is only providing a partial list because of the need to publicly reach out to community members in those projects in order to get more technical information, because their tweets actually say in them, hey, the reason why we're disclosing this is because these are technically different from Bitcoin. And in order to implement them safely, we need direct support from the engineering teams, and we need to be responsible and let the public know so that these teams do not have the ability to, basically, the read between the lines is they don't want them to be able to accuse them of insider trading type activities. And so they feel the need to disclose before they reach out to these projects. As Dash is technically similar to Bitcoin, and so was Ethereum Classic was technically similar to Ethereum, which was already implemented on their site. They never disclosed Ethereum Classic before it went public that they had integrated. I suspect that they would follow a similar path with Dash. They would not feel the need to disclose that they were interacting with us. And so I suspect that when it comes to Coinbase, we will all find out at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the Zcash announcement really took everyone by surprise because it was a privacy coin. Yeah. So it was kind of like, wow. So I think that's why a lot of people got question marks, because it's the unknown once again. Like, we don't know. But
privacy outside of Japan is not an issue. It's not an issue anymore. New York State has approved Zcash, on Gemini, I think it was. There is a recognition among regulators for a need for privacy, and that it is not necessarily nefarious. As long as the operator has in place processes that will flag suspicious transactions, like, hey, this company is submitting a deposit of $500,000. We better ask them where that's from and ask for documentation. As long as those processes are in place, I think that regulators will ultimately be okay with it. The one exception is Japan, which of course is not a key market for us, but it nonetheless is important for us to address that. Maybe now isn't the right time, given the price and where we would like to see our funding go in terms of priority, I think we have a lot of things that we can go execute against that would be more beneficial to the network. But I think we'll be able to address those concerns as well, because at the end of the day, Dash is very similar to Bitcoin. What we do is essentially make CoinJoin transactions more convenient, cheaper, and safer for the user, because you're not giving up you're not sending your money to a third party. But ultimately, the protocols work identically the same. And so the same analytics can be done on the Dash blockchain. You can see that it is a private transaction. You can appropriately risk score that. I think that we're as we educate the people that matter, the decision makers, they all come around to the same conclusion that this is very manageable.
Hey, another popular question was about the Dash.org website upgrade, new site.
Yeah, I think it's in final copy. I don't know the exact date, but I'm almost positive be out before Christmas.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I spoke to Fernando the other day, and he was very positive about it. So no date set yet, but it sounds like it's getting there. So that's pretty good.
I think I owe edits on 2 pages that they wanted my input on, and maybe I'm the holdup.
I did hear about this because you're pretty good at the taglines. So yeah, I look forward to seeing your work on that.
I think they just on a couple key messages just want to make sure I'm good with the copy. I hope I'm not the key man holding that one up. I'll check on it after this.
Right, we got a question that was asked in Discord, and I know you're not normally one to shy away from the difficult questions. So here we go. This was really upvoted as well quite a bit. So what are Waxman and Dash Core Group doing to improve Dash's perception in the greater cryptocurrency community? A great many people still view Dash as a pre-mined scam, and the majority of crypto news publications and forums allow these lies to continue, often even pushing them themselves. So a bit of a loaded question there. But
add to that, recently, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a journalist to get instant send by default in a CCN piece. And after all that, they came back and said, hey, just so you know, the editor wants to add something to balance it out. And so we're going to talk about the Instamine. It's like, oh, like it's something that still happens. It's like, even in glowing positive pieces, people are like, yeah, but let's remind everyone of like, let's try to put some shade on this whole thing. And I mean, obviously there's like lots of projects that were either ICO'd or like, even with Holy Bitcoin, Satoshi controls a large chunk of the currency. There weren't a lot of people mining. Satoshi could be anyone, could do, like, there's a lot of like stuff in the mist in general, but for some reason people just keep on hammering Dash because I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that there are a variety of different publications out there, and they all have different motivations, right? And you're not going to change their motivations. There are some publications that are run by Bitcoin maximalists, period. There are some that are run by VC syndicates that have a lot of their own projects, and they pretty much exclusively cover those in a positive light and cast doubt on others. There are pay for placement websites where you have to pay them a fee in order for them to write a positive piece on you. We don't play those games. That's not something that first of all, it's unethical. You're dealing with people's money here, and you're going to write a puff piece based on whoever's willing to shell out the most money for your eyeballs that you have. I have a serious problem with that. And as far as Bitcoin maximalists and others, you're simply not going to change their mind, at least not overnight. And so I think Dash does suffer from quite a bit of bias. and we don't necessarily play all the games that some other projects do. And I'm proud of that. I think that we should keep, take the high road. All that said, yeah, I do see some of the behavior that you talk about. It's disheartening when it happens. What I can say is what we do in reaction is we reach out to the editors, we reach out to the writers, we dispute anything that is inaccurate. Sometimes they are unwilling to correct inaccuracies. Sometimes they are, and they correct something, tone something down, put it in a more neutral light than they put it originally. And they have varying degrees of ethics. I'd say there's a lot of people in this industry as a whole that lack ethics. And I don't think the journalism that takes place within the cryptocurrency space falls on the high end of the ethics spectrum in general. I'd say there are some good publications out there, and I'd say that there are good individual writers out there who really try to get it right. But it's really disheartening sometimes to see some of the headlines.
Do you want to just quickly address the Instamine issue? Because there may be people watching this on YouTube for the first time thinking like Dash Instamine. And I think you're probably the leading authority to speak on this because you actually thoroughly researched this before you really got involved deep in Dash, right? Because you actually produced research on this.
Yeah. I did some analysis. I can't say it's like deep research, but I spent like a good Saturday really digging into the numbers and some of the assumptions people were making and were those reasonable or not. And I put together a financial, a block distribution model of my own in which I made conservative assumptions. I said, okay, let's say that 100% of the hash rate on the network was Evan and his partner on day one. And for the first X number of blocks, let's say that was his hash rate. And then as you saw additional hash rate come on, that was additional people joining the network. Well, he couldn't have had more than 100% of the initial hash rate. So, probably a pretty conservative assumption. Let's assume that he had no orphans when this thing was finding blocks every couple of seconds, that his orphan rate was not different than other people's. Well, that's probably a bad assumption, but it's a conservative assumption. There's no way that Evan would be immune to the orphan rates that everyone else was experiencing. Let's make assumptions around. So, I went through and I made a series of assumptions about what could have happened and what was a reasonable set of assumptions to use. And I came out with at the very, very high end, he and his partner could have ended up with around 500,000 coins, only half of which would have been Evan's. And the other guy sold out within months, as far as I understand. And I came to that number independently. I came to that number on my own. And then I asked Evan, well, how much, before I get seriously involved in this, how much do you really have? And it was below the number that I'd come up with. And so my conservative assumptions were conservative. He did, in fact, have less than that. And so the storyline that Evan ended up with 2 million coins and that he was the only one mining for the first 48 hours is ridiculous. All you have to do is go to the forums at that point in time, or go to the Bitcoin Talk thread, and you can see a bunch of people commenting on the fact that they're mining and that they're seeing high orphan rates and that all of these things are happening. And I think it's, the storyline just doesn't meet with reality.
it's just sad. Like Dash is coming up to its 5th birthday now in January, and we're still having to address this problem. And the market moves in cycles, right? We're in one now, and every time the price comes down, it increases distribution. And in terms of wealth distribution, if you go to websites like arewedecentralized.com, Dash ranks #1 in being the best distributed coin. And typically, the longer your coin is being out, the more distribution it should have, right? And we launched in 2014. And when you look at Bitcoin 2009, Litecoin 2011, we're doing incredibly well. We're leading from the front right now. So,
well, I posted that analysis in the live chat for people who want to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I would point to some differences in terms of it. You know, you can do those types of analysis. I think it demonstrates that we're pretty well distributed. You can also run taint analysis on the various wallets. There just aren't that many huge wallets left out there that include multiple addresses. There is the caveat, though, that there is an encouragement in the Dash network to break your holdings down into units of 1,000, and that is you can earn funds if you put exactly 1,000 into a given address. And so I don't think that it's an apples to apples comparison with a large holder of, say, Litecoin that would be, you know, maybe incentivized, not incentivized to break that up, but keep it one unit. And so I don't think you're seeing an apples to apples comparison, but I think what the data does show is that it's well distributed. I've also received a download of not the addresses, but a list of accounts on dashcentral.org. People have the option to go there and register their masternodes under their username. And no private information was shared with me whatsoever, about these. But I did ask for, hey, can I see the distribution of account holders and how many masternodes they registered against it? And your average masternode owner has about 4. And I would say there's somewhere around 2,000 masternodes registered there. So it's a pretty good representation of the entire network. It's not perfect, but it's probably the best data we have. And there just aren't, there's no controlling entity. There's no one even close. The voting patterns, I think, reinforce this, that, there are very few people with, say, more than 20 masternodes. And so you look at that type of data, and it's very clear, unless you're just a conspiracy theorist, if you look at the actual evidence, there's very little, if any, evidence that there's a large controlling entity out there, and there's lots of evidence that there isn't one. And so I don't know what to tell people that still believe that narrative, other than 5 years worth of data is proving you wrong. And if Dash is a scam, it's got one of a hell of a long-term strategy for scamming people. We're providing actual value. We're providing new functionality that's never existed before. We're signing up merchants. We're out there pounding pavement. We're out there developing new marketplaces for cryptocurrency to be used. If this is a scam, it's,
you serve me well.
As we've said that before,
for a scam.
Let the world shall never forget the day Evan scammed them into prosperity.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I've talked to Joel and Mark about it, and early on when it all first started, it was kind of a big deal, and it was scary because we didn't know, because we saw a bunch of devs like the XC Dev and the Cloak coins and the Shadow coins. All these, they had large pre-mines, and then they pumped the price, and then they ran off. Well, that never happened with Dash. So yes, early on that could have been a issue.
Evan quit his job, said he would devote at least 2 years to the coin. He in fact put in 3. That was a huge risk for him, quitting his job for something that didn't pay anything. We didn't even have the proposal system at the time. And not many people would be willing to do that. Not very many people would be willing to do that. And so I think that, the risks that were taken by him and by other people very early on to quit their jobs and focus on this full time, I think they deserve everything that they get as far as like, if this is a success. And I think so far we're making good progress against that. And so, yeah, I laugh at this point, and I really hate talking about it at this point. It's like if a reporter asks me, it's like I'm not talking about that anymore. It's
Yeah.
just a dead issue.
Here's a quote.
That's what you have to come up with to have an issue with Dash. Like you're just digging deep.
Yeah. More importantly, and before Ryan jumps in here, more importantly, kind of the facts speak for themselves in the present day. Rather, the only reason you'd be upset about nefarious stuff going on back in the day is if they affect the coin to the modern day. And based on all kinds of chain analysis, all kinds of proposal and voting patterns and everything like that, it seems like one of the most decentralized projects in the space. And there's been, like, I think people would be trying to do more shady things if they had this much power. I think we'd have Dash Core Group putting in proposals month after month during the height of the price run up, and not, as we're saying, waiting for this decentralized mechanism to come in. You see projects like also Dash Force putting in more and more proposals. Hindsight might have been better, but you'd see a bunch of stuff. You would not see failed proposals. You would not see embarrassing things. You would see the Ogilvy and Mather logo proudly displayed on everything, probably. Like if there's centralization and problems, show me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had proposals related to ASU, the website, a number of different things that don't pass. Like there are some things that the network just doesn't agree with us on. And if we had that type of control, it's just, it's laughable.
Don't forget about Bug Crowd as well. I mean, I think we're the only few projects out there that actually open up to, I think it's 60,000 independent security experts to try and break Dash, look at everything that they possibly can. Obviously, there's a bounty in a financial world, but you need to incentivize people to do it. And I think Core actually being very responsible, saying, people have got money in this. They want, we want it to be as robust as possible. And when you see other projects, they kind of, they try and shy away from this. We kind of, very transparent and open, and actually encouraging people to come forward because we want it to be as solid as possible. Would you agree with that, Ryan?
Of course. Why would you not? I mean, this is money at the end of the day, and there's a lot of money in the Dash network right now, and so to not take every precaution you can, I think, would be foolish.
I've got a selfish question to ask.
Let me just say this before we get off this topic here. The Monero community, or some members of them, were very persuasive in pushing that on Bitcoin Talk a long time ago, and that's why it's persisted for so long. And then I just had a quote here. It said that 10 people mined 1 million coins in the first half hour, and that's Charlie Lee who was pushing that. So there's been some
lies.
Yeah.
Okay, Charlie, provide evidence of that.
I've asked him. He didn't. He pointed to something that didn't make any sense. He has no evidence.
Yeah.
He wouldn't apologize. He wouldn't retract it. So I don't know.
Also, what is
Charlie Lee came by our booth at Money 2020, and he sat there for about 2 hours asking questions on the sofa. He sat there and he was asking Glenn all kinds of questions, and he looked around and he was like, "So your proposal system paid for all this?" We're like, "Yeah." And he's like,
good stuff.
Well, what else does it fund? And we're like describing stuff to him, and he's like, you could see the light bulb go off in his head. And I know he wishes he had a proposal system in his coin. I know he does. And I think that then he said some stuff. Well, we get some funding from some T-shirt sales that we have online. And
it's not quite the same, is it?
Yeah.
Maybe they sell a lot of T-shirts. I don't know, but the bottom line is this is just better for the coin. If you look at where we're at versus some of these other projects that have been around even longer, and it's clearly a real advantage we have. That
reminds me, and our wonderful writer Justin covered this recently in the Waste Ratings recently put out some tweet saying that they noticed in the past that this month about 60% of Litecoin's entire supply was moved around by what appears to have been one actor. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, with these kinds of things of like who controls what, it's always very murky and vague. It's like you can't say for sure. But the fact that there's a suspicion that over half of the coin supply was just moved around by one seemingly one actor seems a little cause for alarm for such an old coin.
Yeah, and Weiss Ratings, I think they've done kind of a mediocre job at any of the analysis that I've seen. I have no doubt that there's some entities that control a large share of the coins, but the question that I would ask is, how likely is it that was an exchange or a set of exchanges that were moving funds between one another, a series of large traders that made some big moves between a few of them? It's easy to kind of mistake that for someone. I think most coins in the world of Litecoin are held on an exchange, to be honest, or perhaps in a custody service like BitGo or something like that. And so, I would have to really dig into the research to determine how viable, how probable that is. I find it unlikely that it's 60%, but I think there's probably some exchanges that hold a lot of the coin.
Well, speaking of exchanges holding a lot of the coin, according to Crypto ID, it looks like Digibyte that 21.5% of the entire coin supply is in Bittrex.
It's a bit scary.
Yeah.
Brian, I've got a selfish question.
That's a high number.
Because it's just coming from me. This wasn't the community one. This is one from the heart. So as you mentioned, Evan, I was just thinking about some of the news that's been coming out today about the Robinhood app. They've got 6 million users, and their big news announcement was that they're going to be having a check-in and saving accounts offering a 3% interest rate, and it's generated a lot of interest. Now, Evan, back in the day when he first started talking about evolution, mentioned a kind of user experience where you'd have an interest-bearing savings account, I think was the terminology that he used. Does this interest you? Does that still hold true to you? And in your future vision of Dash, is that kind of what you want it to be? Like this was going to be the future of people's bank accounts, and they would have, do you vision like a savings account as well, where we can spin up masternodes in the background? Like, what do you think about this?
I think that it's further out than my time horizon of what I'm thinking about. And the reason is because there's so much to fix on usability that having the ability to aggregate together inputs into a masternode is a bit further out than the basics. I think you got to get the basics right first. That said, I'm not opposed to the idea. I think we would need to do some user research on it. Like, would that be of interest to people? Would they be willing to park their funds for a period of time in order to, receive a small interest rate? What would it do to the network? How many additional masternodes would spin up? Would that be good or bad for the network? Be good in terms of decentralization, I imagine, but it would probably could affect performance. So I think I'm open to the idea. I think there's a lot of questions it raises in terms of how well the network performs, what kind of an effect it would have on people's willingness to give Dash a try. Like, in other words, our own conversion rate of converting people from interest into actually participating as part of Dash. And I think we would all need to have answers to those questions before we would have a recommendation as to whether or not do it. Evan had a lot of really innovative ideas. And one of them was like collateralized mining. Well, with chain locks, that may not be necessary. the question remains, do you certainly need to have a high amount of proof of work, because you can't always rely that chain locks will work. Chain locks at the end of the day is a backup. But it does raise the question, should we as a network be spending as much as we do on mining? And I've always said I would never propose changing the mining allocation without very long-term time horizon, because people have made investments into mining equipment, and that mining equipment can last 18, 24, 36 months even, and still be operational and so on the network. They've made that investment under the expectation that they're going to get 45% of the block reward. So if you do ever change that, it would have to be, in my opinion, much further out than when people are making capital decisions today. And so, but it does raise the question, do we need to be spending that much on it? Is that a way to achieve the same ends as Evan's idea around collateralized mining? And that is reducing the energy consumption of the network while maintaining the level of security that we enjoy. And so, I think that Evan was a great ideas man. He just comes up with the craziest ideas. He came up with masternodes. He comes up with, but they aren't always the best way to do things. And so for me, I'm more of like, I want to see some evidence. I want to see models. I want to see, some real meat to say, are we sure this is the right thing to do? And this is one where I'm not 100% sold, but I'm not opposed to it either. I think it just there needs to be evidence that says that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, we already see third party, CrowdNode, Neptune Dash doing similar stuff. I think at some point it will all converge and it will just happen, naturally, organically.
Yeah, and there's a consideration there, because in order to do that, you have to hand your coins off to somebody else. Well, now we're introducing a security issue for people. Yeah. So maybe we do it to solve a security problem.
Trustless, yeah.
And make it trustless. So
the phrase, the trend is your friend. It's just like noticing what's going on in the markets. So it's not just the news of what's happening with the Robinhood app. There's also Revolut in the UK. They've just got a European banking license. And it's all about creating these saving accounts now. And that's what they're using to onboard people. And it seems like in terms of mass adoption, people seem to be a lot more open and privy to it. It just seems that's where the market seems to be heading right now. And there's lots of startups taking this direction now. So it seems to be a hot topic right now.
People irrationally value savings account rates. It's one of the ways that banks attract accounts. They do it with deposits. They do it with free checking accounts. They do it with teaser savings rates and so on. And once they have that relationship, they start cross-selling you other stuff. And they do it because people irrationally value that little 3%. Well, that's a really cheap way to get a customer, because if they're putting $1,000 in, that customer just cost you $30 a year to acquire. That's nothing compared to the stuff that banks and other services that they'll sell them. So Robinhood, whether it's trading or other things that they'll eventually get from those customers, I think that it makes a lot of sense. It could make sense for us too if we did the research on it and determined that this would bump our acquisition rate of new users by a wide margin, and it might dilute existing masternode rates by a little bit. Well, that may make a ton of sense. Well, I think when the time is right, and when we get past kind of the base functionality stuff, that's when we'll start to look at things like that and do some research in different markets around the globe and see, what kind of effect it'll have. If it's a no-brainer, of course we'll do it. If there are real downsides to it, we'd weigh those off too. And so I think it's a multi-dimensional thing that I just don't have answers to right now.
ASU, if you're watching, I want to see some research on that.
People were asking about an update for Dash Ventures. I wanted to get that in before we had to wrap up.
Yeah, Dash Ventures has been even harder than Dash Core Group and the Trust in terms of what we're doing. Here's where we're at with it. we think we have the legal structure all figured out. Setting it up will be a matter of a week once we decide to pull the trigger. The stage that we're at right now is we need to find, and I forget the name of the legal role, but in the Cayman Islands, there is a specific legal role. I think it's called a supervisor. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But there is a legal role called a supervisor that is required for this type of legal entity, and they have to be an independent third party. There are only a certain number of supervisors on the island. There's, few dozen of them, and we have to find one that will take us on as a client. Because this is so unusual, it might, some of them might not be comfortable because it's so new, what we're proposing, and we don't know yet. So our lawyer has started to approach some of these service providers and have told us that in the next few weeks he hopes to come back with a few options that we can evaluate and make a decision on. But yeah, it's been a real hassle. It could have been really easy to do if we just forced all the masternode owners to go through KYC.
No.
I don't know about you, but I don't think very many masternode owners would like to do that in order to participate in Dash Ventures. And so the way that we're doing it alleviates that constraint, but getting around that requirement was really, really difficult. But there is a way to do it, and it's it prevents us from having to go through that. So yeah, this has been a huge undertaking to try and figure all of this out, and I can't tell you how much time I've spent on that one, but hopefully early next year.
The price coming down though, because you've been very passionate about Dash Ventures, and because once again it's new territory, trying to push this forward. Has the price coming down changed the way that you prioritize it?
No, I still think it's important. I think number one, we need to prove the concept, right? And setting that up, I mean, we could do anything for the first investment. We could take $1,000 and put it into a U.S. government bond and take the return on that, which would be very small, and just carry out the transactions to return that to the network. And that small act at least demonstrates it. It would also allow us to say, well, is it backed by anything? Well, actually, it is. It's backed by government, the U.S. debt. It would almost be laughable.
Dash would be a stable coin.
Yeah, right. But I think it's about proving the concept at this point, and whenever the price changes, we'll immediately be able to take advantage of that. And I think that it would be a great asset to have in terms of infrastructure that we have as part of our network. The ability to make investments into companies and take equity instead of just granting money all the time. I think there are some use cases where grants make a ton of sense, but if you're pre-product and you're coming to Dash looking for your startup funding, that should be a different story. We're taking on far more risk by using our available budget for that. And so I think that commensurate risk should come with commensurate reward. And I think that will allow that capability to take place. And even if the dollar amounts aren't huge, they were putting 50,000 into somebody, it still can allow some investments to take place that otherwise wouldn't make any sense for us. And so it still improves the efficiency of our system, our proposal system.
Yeah, these things can turn into the next Facebook, PayPal, God knows what. I mean, I'm really bullish on the Dash Ventures.
Yeah,
Right.
so it should be very interesting.
Ryan, are you okay for time? I know you've got another meeting afterwards. So
Well, I'm getting some texts here, so let me look.
yeah,
Where are you?
yeah. I know we've gone over time.
I'm okay for about 2 more minutes. Apparently.
Yeah, we better. So the only last thing I kind of had was you're talking about Evan being the ideas guy, and you're more of a practical person. How much communication really happens with Evan these days? You get a lot of back and forth. Has he been like a ghost for 6 months at a time, and then he just says "I'm alive" and then resumes another 6 months of silence? Like, what's that like?
Evan and I interact mostly in person, fairly infrequently, but when we do, it's deep and for a long period of time. And so I'd say it comes in very large chunks. Evan has a tendency to go off in his thinking cave for long periods of time and then come back with a set of ideas that are brilliant and a set of ideas that don't make sense and a set of ideas that he's still mulling over. And that's where he performs best, I think. I think that he really does move the needle when it comes to ideas. The good news is we've got a lot more of those people around these days that are just incredibly creative, deep on the tech. Eugen, Codablock. These guys are just brilliant on the protocol level. Andy is an incredible architect who really gets the business side of things and can tie the two together. Like really understands user needs, business needs, the technical challenges. And so you kind of go across the board. There's like so many incredible people at this point that are all generating ideas, and the ideas can come from anywhere. It's no longer a one-man show. It used to be. We would not be where we are today if it weren't for Evan. I don't think anybody else had the masternode concept as an idea. I don't think that anyone else had the proposal system as an idea. And so I think that that he was the kindling that kind of lit all of this up. And now you've just attracted so many people that are like, I want to do innovative things with cryptocurrency, and this is where it's happening. So yeah, I think that Evan is exactly where we need him.
Yeah,
perfect.
Man, I'm just thinking about this time last year. We were still high off the Dash conference in London, and that was at the time. That was at the peak time of the market. Now, 2018, it's been a steady decline in the market. However, the Dash core team has just been growing as well. Just reflecting back on just 2018, just Glenn, CFO, Bob, Bradley, like so much has happened in 2018. So even in a down market, considering from 2017 when it was at its highs, we've achieved so much more. So just to wrap this up, although it's not all doom and gloom with the price right now, but 2018 has been really big for Dash, hasn't it?
It has. I can say that last year, I think that we were still kind of this ragtag group of former volunteers that are now getting our first little paychecks, and we were excited about it, and it's like things are moving in the right direction. We can actually hire a few people now that can't afford to just be here for free, and things were exciting. But growing a team like that, it takes time for that team to kind of hit their stride. I feel like 18 was the year that we hit our stride. We really professionalized the team. We really professionalized our processes. We really professionalized the way that we interact within the team. We've really brought on board some high quality talent, and I feel like we're really poised to do some incredible things. So I feel like 18 was still a building year for us. It wasn't this terrible year, other than the price, right? It was a year in which we really built our capabilities and built our network and built our merchant network and built our services on the network and built our user base all across the board. It's been good, but Yeah. Obviously the price has been the one big downer, and unfortunately it's the one item that I think people are most focused on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, we really do appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to future Dash Core Group development updates.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me on. I hope it was helpful to the community, and I'll look forward to the next one. Our quarterly call will be around the end of maybe the last week of January, first week of February. We're going to try and turn it around a little quicker this quarter than we have in the past. So look for that.
Excellent. Joel, would you be so kind to take us out?
Yes. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe on YouTube, as well as all the audio versions, iTunes, Stitcher, et cetera, that will all be posted tomorrow in the post recap. As always, we do a happy little after party, which is sort of like this, but has up to 10 people at a time and goes on forever until Mark starts to see the sunrise and he gets offline or more. And that's going to be on the Dash Talk Discord. The quickest way to get there is go staydashy.com. How will you ever forget that?
Not easy, is it? Well, yeah, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you found this video to be helpful, and also to help others find it as well. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do it and click the notification bell, so in future podcasts you get alerted and you can see this. So thanks again to Brian. This was episode 82 of the Dash podcast. Stay positive, stay humble, but most importantly, stay dashy. See you next week, folks.